Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Virginia's for Realtors. I'm pleased to be joined today by Katie Howlett, team leader of the Howlett Home Team, powered by Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Town Realty in Norfolk, Virginia. Katie, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, you know what? I love this time of year because there's a lot of optimism. I'm hearing from agents all across the state that business is picking up. We obviously still need more listings, but at least we're getting a lot of buyers that are understanding now's your chance and you need to take the plunge. And in talking with a lot of my fellow loan officers in my coaching program, that's happening around the country. So I'm positive and excited about it.
Me too. I have felt it in the last couple of weeks. It's funny, and when the calendar turned to January, it was a little slow for that first week, unlike in 2023, where that first week I felt like my phone began ringing right at January 1st. It was a little bit of a slow start for this January, but then the phone started ringing and people are feeling a little bit more confident, I think.
Yeah.
As am I.
I think that's a big part of it is the confidence factor. And, it's kind of surprising too, because people are like, oh, rates are lower. And if you really look at it, it's not like they went from 7 to 5, right? It's like, yeah, they're a little bit lower, but I keep hearing that they're lower. That's good. Let's keep that
Yeah.
in the market.
It's
So
all perspective, you know?
exactly, yes. So let's go ahead and I always like to give people an idea of the guest and where they're coming from. And so let's kind of go into your story a little bit before you got into real estate. So are you local to the Hampton Roads area? Are you a transplant like me? How'd that go for you?
Well, I was born and raised in Norfolk, and I am the baby of six kids.
Oh boy.
There's a giant age gap between my oldest brother and I, so there's a 20-year span. A lot of people ask, is it, step sisters, brothers? Nope, we're all from the same parents. My parents just, had a long life of having kids.
Okay.
So I am from here, and I have very, very deep roots in here. And I have friends and family that are, my brother, who's 20 years older than me, is a friend of mine. So I have all of his friends. It's been nice. I'm very deeply embedded in the community.
Well, I would think that would be a benefit for you if you have one, the longevity, but two, you have a number of siblings that I don't know if they're in the area or some of them in the area, but they're buying and selling, and then their friends are thinking about buying and selling. So not, being the last isn't a bad thing in that situation.
Not at all, no. And one of the things that I did early in my career was, well, not career because I didn't know what I was going to be doing, but I wanted to get away from this. I went to JMU, James Madison, and then after I graduated, I worked for Red Bull when they came out in the United
Oh,
States.
wow. Okay.
Um, so that was my first job, but I really, really wanted to just get out of here and not be everybody's little sister anymore. So I moved to California. And that's where I got into real estate. But it was getting away from here that kind of actually got me into my career. And then I came back home.
Oh, wow. So did you get your license when you were out in California too then, or you just kind of start dabbling in purchasing, or what was kind of your situation there?
No, that's where I got my license. When I moved to California, my first job there was in advertising sales for the
Okay.
San Diego Business Journal. And I was dealing, a lot of my best customers were real estate agents. And
Yeah.
Yeah, so I really didn't have a clue what real estate was, except for my dad dabbled in it a little bit here and there. But one of my best clients, I was selling her every week. She was my go-to. I need to make this sale person. And she said, hey, listen, have you ever thought about, would you come work for me and be my assistant?
Oh,
And
wow.
I was like, yeah, I mean, it was great. I mean, I love this woman so much. I unfortunately turned her down at the time because I was happy in my career. But fast forward 6 months, I called her and said, hey, are you still looking for an assistant? And she said, I am not, but I have somebody who's moving to the area that needs an assistant, and he's a top producer. So I'd like you to meet him, and the rest is history. That's how
Wow.
I got
Okay.
into it. Yeah.
And I find that's always a great way to start is when you are being mentored by somebody who has figured it out to an extent and is giving you different tips and tactics that they've picked up over the years that you can kind of evolve them from there. So you're out in San Diego and being a West Coast Marine, I'm very familiar and I'm sure you are as well with MCRD San Diego right there next to the airport, biggest tease in the world, as I always say, but I love San Diego area. So when did you transition back and what was that like going from that role getting back out to Virginia?
Okay, well, I worked as an assistant for 2 years there,
Okay.
and I worked for the best guy in the world. He taught me so much about the business, how to run it like a business, all these very creative marketing techniques, basically how to build community, which is what my whole business is now.
Nice.
So I took that, and then at like the 2.5 year mark, we were working on a new development, which was a condo conversion. And he looked at me and he said, "Are you ready to fly? Are you ready to do this on your own? I could use you as like a buyer's rep or somebody to help run the development." So
Wow.
he kind of pushed me out of the nest, which was great, but also scary at the time. I was living in San Diego. It's not cheap, but that's how I got into it. But then, my friends all started leaving San Diego, so I wanted to get back home, and my mom was not doing so well. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to try and get back home. But at that point, I felt like I had a good, I had my feet under me, and I knew I had confidence. So I came back home not as everybody's little sister, but as a real estate agent and somebody who could transact.
Gotcha. So you get back, and what is the time frame of when you are getting back to Virginia to start selling out here?
Okay, so I got licensed in 2006, which was like I like to say, the go-go days when things were a little bit crazy. I got licensed and went to work. I got pretty lucky when I first moved back because I mean, I have my whole family, and I did the whole, all the things that you do. You send out the postcards. My old brokerage would always put things in the newspaper announcing you. And here I was. But since I'd worked on that new development in San Diego, my broker at the time saw an opportunity for me for one of their new developments. So I kind of I got lucky. They asked me to work on the development, which was a really nice way to enter home and have business built in because I was the site agent for a new development in Norfolk.
Outstanding. Well, when we come back, I want to explore that a little bit more. So be right back with Katie. Yeah. So, well, let's talk about that. Let me bring you back in and we'll talk about that. Well, welcome back, everyone. So, Katie, we got your scenario here, and you mentioned offline that you were also licensed in New York for a while. I don't know if you still have your license there as well, but you come from California, moved back to Virginia. So let's explore that a little bit, where you had this experience with the condo, setting it up, running it, getting people in, all that stuff, and then you walk in and are able to do it in the area as well. What was some of the things that you brought with you in that job that really benefited you? And you're like, oh wow, I'm just right out of the gate knocking this out.
Well, naivety.
You're like, this will be easy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think like just having an enthusiasm for it and having an actual, nice product to sell,
Yeah.
and knowing the area. And I think, coming from San Diego, I knew San Diego, but I didn't know it like I know Norfolk. So that was very easy for me. And I was so excited about, the development in Ghent at the time because we were pushing the boundaries of the neighborhood out.
Okay.
So that was fun. I think like, having a little bit of enthusiasm and having a simple contract, honestly, like it was very simple.
Let's
Yeah.
give people an idea what we're talking about here. So you're coming from California, one of the more litigated and regulated states, even back then. And what was a standard contract size? Just, run of the mill contract.
I think at the time it was like 25 pages, and you
Okay.
had to like disclose everything. I mean, if somebody died in the house, you had to list that on your disclosures. If a cat died, I'd be like, you might want to put that in there. We don't want to,
Just to be
leave
safe.
anything out.
Right. Very endangered cat, very expensive. So let's make sure we list
Right.
that. And
Uh,
then you moved to Virginia, and at the time, obviously the contracts have gotten a lot bigger, but back then, my thoughts of that time frame, I feel like there was like 10 pages, So what do you remember of those contracts?
I mean, they were 10 pages, and everything that's in there, and even to today, everything that's in there is in there for a reason, which I love. Like, I think knowing the contract and knowing why is
Right.
important, which is, experience and for, over the course of many transactions, you figure out, oh, okay, yes, that's why this is in the contract. So I think our contract's at a good place. But I do like to sit down with buyers and sellers and really talk about the scenarios that have made those contracts possible, because there are some major pitfalls that you can avoid
Run
by knowing the
into. That's
contract.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why this paragraph's important. And that's a good point though, that We don't need to add more. We're good right now, guys. So whoever's
Yeah, yeah, we're
controlling the
good.
contracts, let's just we're at our peak contract level.
That's
Now,
right.
so, one of the things about moving back to the area and then coming from California, what were some of the ideas that you brought with you that agents here weren't doing that you're like, oh, that's you guys haven't done that, or you don't think about that, or
Yeah. Okay. So one of the biggest things that I brought back was creating like a marketing event. One of the first things I did when I got back was I found a listing. I borrowed a listing because I didn't have any listings at the time, and I had had Santa Claus come, and I invited
okay.
all the neighbors. And you could have your picture, bring your kids. You could have your kids sit with Santa Claus. Tour this beautiful old house that was hard to get into at the time. It was in the Hague and cool. So, um, and then I had different. I marketed with different types of industries. So I had a caterer there. So everybody knew who the caterer was. I wasn't having to pay for all of it. I worked with the lender. So just kind of bringing a bunch of different people together to do a marketing event. So I was able to contact people and get new people out there. And, people got their kids pictures with Santa Claus without waiting in line.
Yeah, and that's a great point. You're not going to the mall and it's 78 families deep. And one of the things the comment that you made in the pre-show questionnaire was, you talk about being a connector of people. And in our business, that's so important. So you have the people that you can go to when you need. And moving back to the area where really that was like a focus for you, like I gotta have a person for this for everything. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, yes, and you want that person to respond to you. So having somebody who
Yes.
will pick up your phone call and then run out to your client's house as quick as possible is I think it's my superpower. Because it's, having people rely on you in that way. I mean, just last night I had somebody that said, "Hey, my power went out in my rental property. My electrician's not answering the phone call." I shot him my electrician, shot him a text, and he texted me 2 hours later, "Oh my goodness, you're a magician." So that's important, and that builds credibility, which is a big thing. So I think that's super important, and making sure that you foster those relationships and let the contractors know and your other trades know that, what you expect of them so that they treat your clients right and it reflects well on you.
Right. I agree with that. And it's such an important part of the job because you do want to be the go-to for everything because that's how do we stay top of mind? Well, if every time you call me you're like, I don't know any, well, let me
Right.
know if you find me somebody. That's
What do you
that's
need, a
not
babysitter? I've got it. What do you
yeah, right.
need?
But if they need anything, you want to be at least be able to put them in the right direction. And in many cases, the people that are working under you, they understand, especially if they're business people, that okay, this person was referred, and that's a big difference.
Absolutely, yeah.
They should do a good job, period, but you should do an extra good job if you want me to continue to be a referral source for you. So that's always a good way to look at it. Um, Now, when you're back in the area and you've chosen the brokerage, at what point are you doing the new development and starting to get buyers outside of that? Tell me about your process.
Yeah, so I was allowed to, thankfully, work on both a new development and do my own buyers and sellers. I did have people that would come to the development that had things they needed to sell, so that was an easy shoe-in for me. So
Oh,
I
wow. Okay.
Yeah, so that was great, and those were fun to convert. And I was doing that, and then I was also making sure that I was doing open houses. So if I was not working at the development on a weekend, I was doing an open house outside of that development.
Okay.
And I was doing postcards, calling people, doing events, and just making sure people knew that I was there. During that same time, I was doing a lot of first-time home buyer events.
Oh,
So I
okay.
will.
Perfect.
And those were really, really great because those are the people I felt comfortable with because I was one of them. So I would again like coordinate with a lender, with the title company, and I had a presentation. I would invite everybody out for drinks, do a presentation of like what it means to buy a house, what the process is, and introduce them. And I got a lot of business off of those back at that point in time.
Let's talk that through a little bit because first I'd like to know, do you feel that that is something that you can still do in the marketplace effectively?
I think so. I do think that the internet, people get online and think they can have an idea of the process. I do think it's better for them to come learn from somebody in person, so they're not, listening to some something off the internet that may not be even be applicable in the state or in the city. You know what I
How to
mean?
get
So
12 rental properties and no job.
yes, that's right. Everybody can do
That's right.
it. So yeah, I mean, I haven't tried one in a while, but I'm not opposed to it. I haven't tried it recently to know because my business is in a different area right now. I'm
Stage.
working
Yep.
mostly off referrals now. But I'm not against trying it if, if I have the time.
And for agents that come in your orbit that are getting into the business now, it's the first time home buyer event, I'll be honest, my experience has not been great on them. That's why I was kind of wondering, like, maybe what you did better to increase the turnout, things like that. On the ones I've seen, there've maybe been, two people there, one person there, and a lot of times they're very challenging situations if they were going to get a loan or not,
Yeah.
from my perspective. But if done right, I have heard of agents that have really succeeded with it. So just, I'm just trying to, for the
Well,
agents
I'll
that
tell
are
you.
considering it, like, what would we tell them?
Well, you have to have a good mailing list. So I did direct my mail.
Okay.
So I drove around to the area and wrote down rental addresses, snuck
Oh,
into buildings, wrote down how they had their addresses. And so I created a good marketing list and I
okay.
was very consistent about it. This is really, before social media is what it was today. You know what I mean? So I like that was my direct mail. And I do feel like direct mail is a good thing to do right now because we're so inundated with email marketing. But yeah, so that's what I did. I mean, I mailed to rental properties.
I'd like to touch on that for a minute because I believe that you are correct in the direct mail is having a renaissance almost, if done correctly. And here's to give some tips to the audience on my thoughts on that. So everybody's, I'm pretty sure, aware that right now VA loans are very popular for lenders to refinance because if you got last year and let's say you're at 6.75 and I can take you down to 5.75, 5.5, it makes sense to refinance. Myself, I'm getting, I don't know, probably 3 mailers of these a day. And you get them and they look like basically almost like bills, but maybe they're not. Maybe it's a notice from the quote unquote VA, but they're not the VA. And this is very, very much like boring, not well done, I guess I would say. In the past, when I've refinanced a large amount of people and I was doing mailers, number one, I would always pick an envelope that was brightly colored. So I'm going with like neon, I'm going something that's going to grab your attention. The next thing would be I always want to handwrite those envelopes because if you receive something handwritten today and it's green, you're going to open that up, right? You're just gonna be like, what is this that I got? And if I'm trying to get your attention, that's the starting point to be a little bit different than the other stack of 9 that I may particularly may get. So for folks out there listening, that'd be something I would recommend. Whether you do it or not, or whether you have some kid write them up for you, then that's what I would go with.
I like the idea of the different color envelope. I'm gonna have to put that into my practice.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just go when next time you go to the mail, and you have a little bit of mail, look and see how many of these would catch my eye if I'm a
Mhm.
consumer. And if the answer is like, okay, they're all white, they're all, you're gonna be like,
Right.
that's not gonna do it.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, bill, bill, bill. So that would be my recommendation. But now let's go into kind of like your experience on open houses and maybe some tips that you picked up then you still do, you recommend for people, or maybe some things again that are coming back that people need to be doing.
Well, yeah, open houses have always been a part of my business. I mean, even if you don't get a lead, you sit there and you have 2 hours of quiet time.
Right.
Um,
Some thinking time.
so exactly. But you see who's in the market. It gives you like another little insight, little snippet that's going to help you speak to the other clients that you might have.
Yeah.
Because if you're having 15 people show up at an open house, well, that's an indication that things are going on.
Yeah.
Or if nobody's there, why? So no matter what, it helps educate you, which is like a huge part of being successful in this business. I'm not a type of person that follows you around the open house. I like to meet and greet and let you do your thing and then kind of try to learn about where you're coming from.
Right.
And I think that's where I connect mostly with people is just like, I'm not doing a salesy thing. I'm just trying to learn about them. And if I can give them any information on the area, and or things that are helpful to them, that I think that's providing some value to them is like the best. And that's how I have the most success. So when you do an open house, make sure you know the neighborhood, make sure you know what's around there, make sure you know the comps, and you can speak to it, easily and,
Yes.
not on pieces of paper, just, conversationally.
Now, when you think back on the number of open houses you've done, and are there any characteristics of either the house, the time frame, the month where you got better turnout than you thought, or basically like almost like a template? Like if I'm like, I want to do it on this day, ideally it's going to be this, it's going to be this time. This is the neighborhood. These are the things I'm looking for if I'm going to do an open house for an agent out there.
I would say just pick a popular neighborhood, honestly. Like you
Okay.
don't do it in some obscure neighborhood. And if you want to do it in a price point that is moving. And so, yeah, or something that's hard for people to get into, honestly, those are the three that I look for. I don't do it in, condo building. It's hard to access. Like those,
Okay.
are open houses that should be done for the seller, but those aren't going to give you like a ton of people walking in because
Right.
it's not easily accessible. And but yeah.
They're knocking on the wrong doors, just all kinds of
Right.
stuff can go wrong on that. Um, I'd like to talk about, as a successful agent who's been in the business since '06 and then doing it in California before, let's put on our thinking cap here. And if you got thrown in the time machine and you hadn't done real estate before, and now it's 2024, what would you be doing right now in our first 6 months to start generating business that you see newer successful agents doing, people that are getting out of the business coming up, didn't make it at, in 2023? What would be some of the things you'd be looking to do?
Well, making sure that you're not a secret agent so that your sphere of influence know who you are. And also, and you need to prove your worth, right? So you need to provide some type of value to people when they're looking, like looking to you for advice. So knowing the market, and that's super important because if you're going to do all this social media or whatever, if somebody calls you, make sure you know your stuff.
Yeah.
So I do think that social media is powerful and it's free. I mean, I used to spend a lot more money on print and advertising. So if you do social media and you do it well, then it's okay. It shouldn't be your only form of marketing, but it's something, that's really great if you do it right. And then creating connections with people. So, and maintaining those connections and staying in front of them so that you're top of mind. So doing events, inviting people so that you're face to face, connecting people. Um, those are all, things that I would do. I mean, I like to sit on Mondays and reflect on the week before and try to thank everybody who's made that last week successful or
Nice.
positive
Okay.
impacted me. And it does two things. One, it helps me be grateful and gratitude and, not get caught up in whatever negativity's out there. And two, when you get a personal note, it's just something nice to get, it makes you feel good. So if I take some time on Mondays and really think about like how somebody affected me and let them know, it's great because we don't do enough of that.
I love that idea. So it's basically a Monday reflection. And during
Hmm.
that time, do you find you maybe write 5 thank you cards, or, some weeks for 10 and some weeks for one, or like what is, and when
I try to
you,
do a minimum of 10, and I really like
nice.
what I
Okay.
do throughout the week is this is one thing that my coach told me that I really, really love. I keep envelopes with me. So if I have some positive experience or somebody, just so I don't forget, I put their name on that envelope and I collect the envelopes. So on Monday, I may have like seven. I always try to write at least 10. But if somebody, it's just those little moments. And if I can remember, I write their name on an envelope. And then when I sit down on Monday, I have at least my first 5 to 7.
Yes. Okay. Let me ask this question a kind of a slightly different way. Now, looking at it, if you're coaching the agents in your office, new agents that are getting into it, what are some, not that they're bad people, obviously, but more like, I'm not sure if you're going to make it if you're not doing, you seem to be shying away from doing X, Y, and Z, that like you got to, whatever mental block you have on it, you got to get over it.
Oh, God. Can you rephrase that?
Yeah,
I
basically,
know,
like
yeah,
if an
yeah.
agent that you think has potential, but is struggling. And then if you look at it and you're like, okay, well, are you doing this? And they're like, no. Are you doing that? No. like, okay, how do we get out of our own way on like, well, that's uncomfortable for me. Like, well, these are the things we got to do to
These are
make it. So
Well, you have to be consistent. This is that my biggest piece of advice and that I was told by the man who brought me into the business is this is not a hobby if you want to be successful.
nice.
This is it, run it like a business, not a hobby. So yes, it's great to be able to work for yourself, but you need to be in the office consistently and doing the things consistently that get on the phone, make your list of people to call, but it has to be done every day.
Yeah.
It's a grind, but it action creates business. If you're sitting around on your phone at home, that's not helping you. Get into the office, listen to conversations that are happening. And that's, through osmosis, you might learn something about a deal or, somebody might need help. But if you're there, you're giving yourself an opportunity to be the person picked.
Yeah, and that's such a great point. I think people get dejected when it's not working out as easily as they're hoping it would, or a client didn't go with them and they thought they were gonna. It's like you got to dust yourself off and get back on the horse, basically. And the idea of this is not a hobby. And that's why top producers are top producers. They don't stumble into being top producers. They're like, oh my gosh, I did 80 deals last year and I was on
Oh, perfect.
vacation 9 months of it. That's amazing. It's like,
Wow.
nope, there's a little bit more involved than that.
Yeah, and one thing I do consistently that it really helps keep my attitude good and it helps keep me learn is I listen to podcasts all the time or I listen to motivational speakers. I'm not sitting around like just listening to the radio. When I'm in the shower, I'm listening to a coaching session or something because it's what you feed your brain. I could feed my brain nonsense or negativity or the news, which I've cut out completely. Or I can, learn. And that's what I choose to do on my drives from one appointment to another, or, when I'm getting ready in the morning.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And certainly, hosting Virginia's for Realtors, I hope lots of agents are passing this along to others. Myself, I do the same thing. I listen to other podcasts. I will give a good podcast that I think every agent should be listening to on a regular basis is Housing Wire. And they're talking
Mm.
about everything from the commission lawsuit to mortgage rates to what's going on in the market. It's one of the most downloaded podcasts for professionals. So, and Virginia's Realtors comes out on Fridays, so you can certainly listen to my show on that time. But check that one out. Um, one of the things that we're going to get into where you're at in business right now, and I love what you were talking about though. Of this is really not a hobby, so we need to take it serious, or at least put in the effort. And being a connector of people, that's such a great way to get this going. So we'll be right back with Katie, and we're going to talk about your business currently. There we go. Well, welcome back, everyone. So, Katie, you've been in business now. Gosh, it's the years creep by, don't they? And for quite a while. And now, where you are at in business has evolved certainly from where you were at in the beginning. But let's talk about some of the systems and processes that you have in place to build your business right now.
Okay. Well, I use a CRM, which
Okay.
allows me to really stay in front of my clients and know who to stay in front of. So there's certain people that are going to be sending me a ton of referrals. I need to stay in front of those people and make sure that I not only stay in touch with them, but thank them. So the contact management system I use is very good at that. So I'm mostly by referral right now. I think last year I was 95%. And I want to keep it that way.
For sure, for sure.
There's
And now you mentioned you
let
were in a coaching program too. Were you doing that, like in the coaching programs that I've been in, different ones, but it's like, okay, these are my A's, these are my B's, these are my,
Correct.
they're nice, but they don't refer anybody. And then there's the other folks, I guess, let's just
Yes.
leave it like that. So do you kind of have that broken down as well?
Yep, 100%. And
Okay.
I revisit it all the time.
Yeah.
So it's one of the things that's important to me and it helps me not feel like I'm spinning out of control. It's like I come in, I know what I need to do.
Yeah.
Um, and part of that coaching is also just making sure that you're in front of people and like not on the phone, just in your meeting with them.
Right.
So
Well, I love
yeah.
that idea. Now, and especially having the CRM to kind of really direct flow of traffic for you of like, we all just, okay, what do I do today? Right. It's like, I'm motivated, ready to go. What do I do? And now as you get further along in your career, it's like we do this and then we do that, you know?
Right.
So
Not trying to recreate the wheel. I mean, honestly,
exactly. It's been done
people,
for us before. So
it's right. And my particular CRM, I just like it because it's all about people and relationships. And I think I'm probably in the best suited career for my personality. I actually like people. There are not many people I don't like because once I can figure out like what makes you tick, I can't dislike you once I
gotcha.
understand your why, you know? So yeah, that's kind of why I love my CRM and really why I love my job.
Now, what do you use for your CRMs? Is it one specific for the company, or do you have like Follow Up Boss? Like, what do you use?
I use Buffini.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so I love it. It's easy, for me it's easy and it's so powerful, like all the different options you have. And I've had it for 3 years, but honestly it's the last two that I really dug deep and it's pretty powerful if you actually take the time to look into it, and use all the tools.
I feel like you should have gotten a legacy discount, like being in the San Diego area and
Yeah.
obviously like the Buffini hometown.
Yeah. I know, but I didn't really discover it until like 2019. So,
Well, they're always happy to
yeah.
have new clients, no doubt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So hitting the CRM really good, and that's giving us the way to stay in front of our past clients. Now let's talk about some touch points that you do in there. So do you have different touch points for a VIP versus, like, again, kind of it was fine, but they don't recommend anybody. So how do you stay in front of them?
Well, I start broad because I like to throw a good party. So start broad and try to have an event that I can invite everybody to. This particular year we did something really fun and it came about as a kind of a off the cuff idea I had. And now it's many hours later, but it's given me some really good marketing and touch points. So what we did, I sending contractors, like I said, I'm a connector of people to different clients' houses. And one of my clients goes, "Man, you send some good looking people over here." And I was like, "I know, I should do a calendar of my contractors." And then I was like, "Wait, maybe I should do a calendar of my contractors."
Okay.
So this year we decided we were going to do a contractor calendar, and I invited my top guys and girls to come and get their photographs taken with a professional photographer. We rented a place. And so I have 12 different people I featured, and every month we are going to feature them on social media or whatnot and have, talk about why that's important to real estate. So that's given me like a really nice 12 months of items to do and
Yeah.
events formed around it. So, had a calendar. I had an event where I invited all my clients in when we did the photo shoot because I did it at a really unique place that people really wanted to see. So I said, "Hey, I'm renting the place. Might as well just throw a party."
Yeah.
So I invited people. And then I did my calendar release party in early January. And so you could come meet the people of the calendar and mingle and have fun. So things like that. I get excited about it. And my last thing I do consistently, and it's close to my heart, is I do litter cleanups because my biggest pet peeve is seeing litter. And so we do them quarterly and we find a spot and I'll market it. And basically for anybody that comes, you come and you get your stuff to go clean up your litter, but you get rewarded with a beverage when you come back. So be it a cup of coffee or a beer, but if you come back and you show me a picture of the trash that you've picked up, then I, treat you to a drink.
I love that one. I'm with you on that. Litter does drive me insane too. I've been to Singapore, and when I was in Singapore in early late 90s, early 2000s, somewhere in there, they will cane you if you do not throw away your litter. So it was the cleanest place I've ever seen. And it's
Get a little
definitely
bit of
yeah, and then it's
that.
like you come back to certain areas, just like, wow, I mean, really, we couldn't not throw this away or whatever. So I'm with you 100%. And I love
Yeah.
that idea because it's community building. You're getting your name out there, you're getting your face out there, you're seeing other people who have like-minded interests that are coming out for the event that tell their friends. Win-win all around.
Yeah, they're my favorites.
The last one I want to touch on this with you is kind of, you mentioned the coaching. Let's talk about your coaching evolution. Did you find it to be like when did you decide to get it in coaching? Did you see immediate results from coaching? Please tell me about your experience.
Well, coaching is expensive, so I was really hesitant to make the commitment for a long time. But I think it came about where I love to mentor, but I also realized that I needed somebody outside of my brokerage and outside of my sphere to hold me accountable and give me different ideas and ways to look at things. So that's where I decided, and I took the leap of faith. I spoke with my husband because it is a bigger chunk of change than, just you're running an ad. But once, it's I need it. So I need it for me to stay on my game, and I find it very helpful. I've only been doing it for about a year now. I've been using the CRM, but I look forward to the calls every week, and it's really helped me stay consistent.
And that's even at somebody at your level, who's sold millions and millions over the years to get into it now where and sometimes it's just the fresh ideas that a coach brings in, right? So it's like, and when you don't have anybody to hold you accountable, I find that's the best part for me. Like I bring ideas, but I need somebody to hold me accountable because there's no boss for me. So it's like, did you do a podcast? Maybe, maybe not. And
Yeah,
so
deadlines.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
How many people did you talk to this week? How many people did you meet? And that's where the coach comes in, and that's their job. And I can say that it's worked out well for me. So it'd be interesting to see kind of how your evolution goes if you start now. Are you like seeing some ideas already bear fruit in this year that you weren't doing before? And you're like, I
Oh,
wish I'd been
absolutely.
doing that like for the last 10 years.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just my schedule wise, I can you making sure Y Coach, they do a very in-depth personality test, and they're able to kind of have your coaching be totally customized to that personality that that you have. So, they're like, hey, look, and this is, I think, true for most people. The morning is the time that you need to be getting it done, do it in the morning so you
Yeah,
can get your busy work done, so that when the phone rings and there's a fire to put out at noon, you've already gotten the stuff done that you need to build, for your future business, right?
right.
Like your current business takes up a lot of time just putting out fires, making sure that you are on top of your game and the transactions smooth and all of that stuff. So like making sure you have that morning to market.
Great idea and very important. All right. When any other kind of things you want to touch on as far as pillars of business for you right now that you'd recommend to other agents?
Yeah, so I think like one of the things about every real estate transaction is so different, and there are going to be things that you cannot anticipate coming up, and they can totally sidetrack you and take you away from your focus of your business and your life. So I am a big proponent of getting as many unknowns out of the way as soon as possible. So I am a very big fan of pre-list home inspection. So as a listing
Ah,
heavy
okay.
agent, I really, really, really make the case for a pre-list home inspection with my sellers. And that allows me to really shine, get a lot of these unknowns out of the way from the beginning. I can price out quotes. I can get very granular on their numbers and what they can expect out of the deal. It just makes it way smoother for them and myself, and the buyer's agents generally love it too. So like it's been a game changer for me. I'm at about I don't even remember the last time I didn't have a pre-list inspection, but it's really helps me anticipate and get a huge chunk of the unknowns out of the way.
I love that idea. And so, pre-list inspection, with the deal you're probably getting on them now, $350, somewhere around
Yeah.
there. It's, I'm assuming. And then, when you do them, have you, let's say we did 10, did you find maybe one or two that were like, oh my gosh, this was a big deal. Homeowners had no idea about it, that we would be talking about taking the house off the market. We'd be talking, if we'd gone under contract, all these other things.
All the time.
Wow.
Sellers don't climb under their house. In fact, I just had one 2 weeks
I
ago,
do
and they
not.
were
That is
like,
correct.
wait, 2 weeks ago, they were like, wait, when we bought the house, the asbestos should have been taken out. And I was like, yeah. So, I find that too, that unless you're climbing back under there, a receipt for a repair doesn't mean anything. You have to check it.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
um, the pre-list, they were like, what? Oh my gosh. So of course we're getting on that, but it allows us to get on it and not under the time crunch of a contract. So I'm able, it makes the transaction so much easier for them. And if they'd already been through selling a house before where this comes up, they can really appreciate how smooth it goes when you have the pre-list.
I love that idea, and I can see how that has so many benefits, especially when if you did spend time, effort, and energy to take the pictures, market the property, have the open houses, we go under contract, and then 3 weeks in, we're like, oh no, we
Yeah.
have sellers are going to have to reduce the price to get this to because their house is being, we're under contract on something else, or their house is
Mhm.
being completed almost. And for that small investment up front to really, like you said, take that unknown out of the equation. I love that idea.
Yeah. And let's be clear, we're not trying to hide anything. We're trying to get all the dead bodies out so that, at least know that they're there,
Right, right.
because we're going to find them anyway. Let's find them sooner than later and give me time to use my contractors and use our people to get it done in a non-pressure situation.
Would you say, and kind of a follow-up on that, let's say we again go back to our idea, I got ten potential listings. Do you get pushback on from anybody on that? And if so, was that almost like,
Oh,
and it turned out to
yes.
be a reason?
You can tell a lot about people from, like if they want to do it or not doing it. But if I think most people, once I explain to them the benefits of it, they want to do it. And they're like, why wouldn't I do it? You're like, yeah. And the other thing, just as a listing agent, or as when you present it to when a inspector that you hire as a seller tells you something, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that. Versus a buyer's inspector, they're like, what? Are you sure? Like the psychology of it changes big time.
Right, right.
So I mean, it really helps
That's
everything.
that's a great idea. When we come back, I want to go over some great stories. You've been doing it a number of years, so I know you got some good ones. We'll be right back with Katie. Well, welcome back, everyone. So, Katie, let's. I love story times because they're agents run into the craziest stuff. But I'd like to start with maybe the best piece of advice that had the biggest impact on you that you got at some point along your career.
You're only as good as your next deal.
Wow. Okay. Yes.
And and that goes with everything. So making sure that you're doing your absolute best for your client, but also making sure that you are being an agent that other agents want to work with. So that when you call to show their listing, they're like, oh man, I hope Katie sells this. Or
Yeah.
if you're up against other agents, they're like, oh, well, I know Katie's going to work hard for her clients, but she's going to be fair. Because I don't think that just because you're advocating for your clients, it shouldn't be a battle. So I try to approach everything with like, we can make this work for everybody.
Right.
Um, so
I
you're
love
only as
that.
good as your next deal.
That's perfect. Every new relationship coming into play and you start racking up those, you're only as good as your next deal, that reputation is going to help you. And then it continues and continues. So just the mindset of that is beautiful. Now, how about a personal motto? So, kind of what's your like go-to motto these days, or one that if you're putting on your wall, it's going up and this is going to be it?
I think you're only as good as your next deal. I mean, I
Okay.
don't, or treat everybody like you want to be treated. I mean, if you can just do that every day, then generally people want to be around you.
Awesome. That's a good one. All right. So now let's go into a bold move because I love bold moves. I made a video post about, do you know what the motto for the British SAS is?
No, tell me.
Who dares wins. And so I feel when I talk about a bold move that that's kind of that mindset. Like you take a chance, you got a chance. And that's always kind of how I've looked at it. So, can you think of a bold move you made early in your career or recently that got you a deal, a transaction, working with a client that you wouldn't have gotten if you hadn't done this?
Well, yes. So when I first started, I was working as an assistant, but I was licensed. But I was also nannying, and the people I nannied for were very wealthy, and he had built a real estate empire of commercial properties.
Okay.
So I knew he was going to be selling his house because he had just built a new house, and asking for that business was a really bold move. I mean, he knows exactly what I've been doing. He knows
Yeah.
that like that I don't have any experience, but putting it out there and letting them know that I listen, I'm going to work 3 times as hard. And also I have this whole resource of, my broker that's going to help me and all these people that want me to succeed. So that was like the biggest thing. And I got $1.5 million listing on it. And it was,
Oh,
it
and
was
this is in
scary.
California too, right? Correct.
Yes. Yeah,
So
yeah,
if we're
yeah.
talking about now, you're probably looking that house up and it's
It
five,
just sold for five
six.
and a half.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, timing's everything, but it was still a good one back then.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's an amazing move. I mean, I can't even fathom the courage that takes to be like, hey, give me a shot. And kudos to that person for like, yeah, okay, no problem. I
Yeah,
am. And
exactly.
that's
It was good.
awesome. All right, so the last one I have is always my favorite question to ask. So we will go, and if you have a couple to share, however you want to go, whatever direction you want to go in. So, funny or scary, weird story about a showing, a transaction, clients, you name it.
All right. So safety wise, like we always have a policy. Look, if this is back in the day when you get sign calls and things like that, but you never just go meet somebody at a property, right?
Right,
Like our policy was come to the office, I'll get a copy of your ID, put eyes on you, have my, the receptionist look at you, just to make sure
right,
that you're.
right.
So I always was really good about that. And I did have this man who called off something. And said, okay, well, when you want to first meet, we'll meet at my office and chat. And I mean, it was kind of strange. And I had him talk to my lender and he was like, man, he's kind of a ghost. That doesn't have much like credit history and stuff. So I was kind of like weary about him. And I was like, I'm definitely meeting him at the office. And he kept calling. So every time he was supposed to come, he never came. And then he calls and
Mm,
says, hey, listen, this house I just called, I saw and I called the listing agent and she's taking it off the market tomorrow. Can we go see it like now? And I was like, I was like, let me call you back. So I called the listing agent and I confirmed that yes, she indeed was taking it off the market the next day. And I made a rookie mistake and a weird mistake, and I agreed to show him that property without having him come to my office.
mm.
So, I tell him to meet me there. That the listing agent obviously knows I'm going to be there, but all of my spidey senses were going off, and I'm like, I shouldn't do this. And he gets out of the car. Okay, this is a $700,000 house. He's driving like kind of a beat up car. I pull up behind this beat up car, gets out of the car, comes to shake my hand, and he's wearing gloves in the middle of summer. It's like,
Okay.
okay, what do I do now?
Yeah.
So, again, like under no circumstances am I going into this house, and how do I
Yeah.
backpedal this?
Wow.
Um, so I end up being like, oh, so it was, we didn't have them on the lockbox keys on our phone at that point with these little black boxes. So I go up to the lockbox key and I kept putting in the wrong code. And I was like, you know what? This lockbox is broken.
Smart.
Yeah. So I never
Wow.
ended up
Way to
going
think
into
on
the
your
house with
feet.
them and I didn't know what to do. I was like, ah. Long story short, I ended up actually selling that man a house. But
Okay.
he never came to an appointment without gloves on, but I was able to meet him at my office later and like get a copy of his ID and get a comfort level on him. But it was so like, are you serious? Gloves in the middle of summer. And
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure to this day why he wore gloves. Maybe it was a skin condition, but like, it was a crazy story.
I'll tell you what though, I love the think fast on your feet. And then for agents that if you do have a similar experience for the listeners, yeah, just bail. Just I can't get this one open, we'll
Yeah.
try again. And
Yeah. It was
kind of go from there. And
it was
I love
wild.
that. All right. Now hopefully more upbeat story for the next one.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. I can't even think of one right now. I'm still thinking back to that last
Oh, you're
one.
good.
I'm
You're good. I
sorry.
do apologize. I didn't mean to throw you a wrinkle there, but yeah, I think the public say or the safety for agents, that's such an important point, and I feel like you made a great point for agents that it's just a way to get out of it, and that's important to do, and it's not worth the commission or the whatever that would potentially be, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
well, Katie, I appreciate you taking the time so much to come on the show. I wrote a list of notes from things that you have said, and just thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.